Hello everyone, my name is To. I am the Senior Migration Advisor at Proactive Legal Victoria. Today I'm going to share with you the 485 Temporary Graduate Visa, the information about the visa as well as all the new and updated change that the government has implemented during the last couple of years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Just before we get started, just a reminder for everyone, all the information that I present today is for general information only, and it should not be taken as migration or legal advice. So it is best to seek professional advice from your registered migration agents or lawyer. So, as we all know, for the past couple of years, because of the COVID-19 pandemics, many changes have taken place, and including the Subclass 485 Temporary Graduate Visa. So just before I talk into the change, I'll just quickly remind everyone about the requirement of the visa before I talk about the change. So for the visa, as we all know, this is a visa that is designed for graduates that complete courses in Australia. So after the completion of their course, they can apply for a visa, and the durations is ranging from 1.5 years to up to 4 years, and with the new changes could be up to 6 or 8 years. So it's a very long time for the visa. So in terms of requirements, one of the requirements for the visa is that it must be made in Australia, except for the COVID changes, which I will update a bit later. The next one is the requirement for the applicants is to hold or have held an eligible student visa for the past 6 months. So this is a separate requirement to the 6-month completion of the course, which I will talk a little bit later on. But just a reminder that the applicant must apply for this visa within 6 months of holding their eligible student visa. And obviously, 485 visa is a visa that cannot be only applied once, except for those that have studied in the regional area. So if you have applied 485 before and you study in Melbourne or Sydney, then you can only apply once as a primary applicant. As a secondary applicant, it wouldn't affect your eligibility. So for example, if you got your 485 on the basis of your spouse getting the 485, then you still have your own 485 to apply. There's an English requirement, so an IELTS of an overall band of 6 and no band less than 5, so any equivalent, for example, PTE. Please note that this is a time of application requirement, so you must have your English test result at the day of your application. So if you do your application now and then let's say you take the test a week later, you will not satisfy the visa requirement. Another requirement is you must apply for Australian Federal Police check. So this is can be an overlooked requirement. So I've seen many applicants who apply their police check after they lodge the visa, which will usually result in a refusal. You must have made adequate health insurance arrangements. And moving on to one of the important requirements, which is the applicant must have satisfied the Australian study requirements in the last 6 months before the date that they apply the visa. And Australian study requirement can be quite a complicated matter in the migration laws, which require another detailed explanation on its own. But a quick brief discussion about it is there's 2 parts to the Australian study requirements. The first part is that the study must be result of a standard course duration of 92 academic weeks. If you study for your course for 1.5 years, then that will not satisfy the Australian study requirement. Another part of the requirement is that you must have physically studied in Australia for 16 months. So that is 3 semesters. If you physically study less than that, you will not satisfy this requirement. And last but not least, if you are a graduate of a non-bachelor or master course, so for example, you do your Cert 4 of commercial cookery and then followed by a diploma in hospitality, then you usually belong to, you can apply the graduate work stream of the 485 visa, which will require a skill assessment. But at the moment and until the 30th of June this year, so 2023, this requirement is exempted. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So basically, those are the brief summary of the visa. So what are the changes? One of them is that normally, as I mentioned before, you must apply the visa in Australia, but at the moment, during what we call a concession period for the COVID-19, the applicant can apply for the 485 inside or outside of Australia. The next change, which I have already mentioned, the applicant applying under the graduate stream must provide a skill assessment for the application, but again, until the 30th of June 2023, this requirement is exempted. While another requirement usually for the 485 visa is that at the time of the visa grant, the applicant must be in Australia. But because of the COVID concessions, at the moment, the applicant can be in or outside of Australia if the 485 is granted during the concession period. Secondly, if the application is made during the concession period and the applicant is outside Australia, it still can be granted while the applicant is outside Australia, even if the concession period has ended. Finally, there's a 485 replacement stream, which I will talk a little bit later on. But for this stream, the visa can also be granted in or outside of Australia. Well, the next change, as we all know, and it already has been implemented, which is the master by coursework. So if you graduate a master by coursework in Australia, the 485 period is now 3 years instead of 2. So before we only get 2 years for a student of master course by coursework, but now we have a 3-year duration, so a year longer. Secondly, this change has also been implemented a couple of years ago, which is additional time on the 485 for students that have taken their course in regional area. So if you are granted your first 485 in a designated regional area or the regional center or other regional area, which is basically area that is not Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane, you will have up to 1 or 2 year additional on your 485 visa. And the requirement is that for the first 485, you must have lived in the area for 2 years, and then you can reapply the second 485 visa, provided you have lived in the regional area for 2 years after your graduations of the course. And this stream does not exclude your 485 replacement stream. So basically, you can have up to 3 485 visa. And finally, there's a replacement stream for the 485. So this is specifically designed for those 485 visa holder who has been outside of Australia during the COVID period and unable to return to Australia due to border restrictions. So some of the requirement of this visa is that you, first of all, the application must be made before January 2027. So it's still a long way to go. The applicant must have hold the 485 visa granted on the basis of the primary applicant for the first visa. It must also be granted before the 15th of December 2021, and it must be in effect on or after the 1st of February 2020. And this is an important requirement. If at the time of the grant of your 485 you are in Australia, you must be outside Australia for at least a day in the period between the 1st of February 2020 and 14th of December 2021. So in that period of about 2 years, you must be outside of Australia for at least 1 day while holding your 485 visa. Then you will be eligible for the replacement stream. And if you're outside Australia at the time of your 485 visa grant, you must return to Australia and also leave Australia again for at least a day before the 14th of December 2021. Obviously, there are other additional requirements of the 485 visa, which I will not go into details, but these are the basic requirements. And finally, there's, as we all know, a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement about the incoming change of the 485 visa for additional periods, because this regulation has not been regulated in the law yet. So until then, this is all the information that on this slide is from the announcement by the government. So basically, if a student study for certain course, certain selected course, the visa, the 485 duration for their visa will be extended for a longer period. So if you do a bachelor, before it was 2 years, now it's 4 years. A master increased to 5 years from 3 years. And for PhD, it's from 4 years to 6 years. For bachelor and master course, you must be studying certain eligible course. For PhD, it can be in any area. So example of, because there's a long list, so I won't go into the detail, but you can find that online as well. We'll put a link in the show notes. But example of eligible course are medical professional, nursing, IT engineer, pharmacy, food technologies, what else? Teaching and education, allied health. Some of the courses that are not, some of the popular courses that are not eligible are commercial cookery, social worker, accountant. Those are not eligible courses. And all of these new rules for the visa will be implemented after the 1st of July 2023. So either if you are applying your 485 visa after this date or have your visa under processing during this date, the new change will be implemented. That's pretty much for these updates, and we do hope the information is useful for you. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email or through our social media channel, and we will be happy to respond. Thank you.